They had watched Earth for 300 years. They had placed small machines near the planet long before humans learned to build rockets. These machines recorded everything, every war, every bomb, every act of cruelty that humans did to each other. They watched it all from their home world many light years away. Ambassador Iran was old, even by the long standards of his species. His gray skin had turned almost white with age, and his 4 eyes had seen many terrible things in his life. But nothing worried him more than the small blue planet called Earth. "They are monsters," he told the Grand Coalition. His voice was calm but firm. "In just 1 century, they killed over 200 million of their own kind. They built weapons that could burn entire cities in seconds. They poisoned their own air and water, and now they have started to reach into space." The Grand Coalition was the most powerful group in the galaxy. 17 different species had joined together under one banner. They controlled thousands of star systems. They had existed for over 50,000 years, and they had never faced a problem they could not solve. The representatives of the 17 species listened carefully to Ambassador Iran. Some of them had also watched humanity. They knew what he said was true. "What do you suggest?" asked the representative from the hegemony. They were tall beings made mostly of crystal. They did not understand emotions, but they understood danger. "Extinction-level quarantine," Iran replied. "We surround Earth, we cut them off from the rest of the galaxy, and if they try to break free, we destroy them completely." There was silence in the Great Chamber. Destroying an entire species was not something the Coalition did often. But humans were different. Humans were dangerous. The vote was unanimous. All 17 species agreed. Over the next 2 years, the Coalition built the largest fleet in galactic history. 12,000 warships came together at the edge of the Sol system. Ships from the Dominion floated next to vessels from the hegemony. Collective cruisers lined up beside syndicate destroyers. It was a sight that had never been seen before and would never be seen again. Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Inevitable Truth. He was a decorated officer with over 200 years of military service. He had fought in 11 wars and had never lost a battle. This mission, he believed, would be his easiest. "Show me the enemy fleet," he commanded. The holographic display flickered to life. It showed Earth's defenses in detail, 43 ships. Most of them were small patrol vessels. A few were larger but still primitive. They used chemical rockets for propulsion. They had no shields. Their weapons were laughable by Coalition standards. "They don't even have faster-than-light communication," said his second-in-command, a younger named. "If we attack, they cannot call for help." "There is no help to call," replied. His thin lips curved into something like a smile. "We are the galaxy, there is no one else." The fleet began its journey inward. They passed the outer planets first. A frozen ball of ice and rock the humans called Neptune. Then came Uranus, another cold giant. The gas giants Jupiter and Saturn loomed large but empty. The asteroid belt was quiet. Mars, the red planet, showed signs of early human settlement. Small domes dotted its surface. Mining equipment sat idle on its rusty soil. The humans had seen them coming, of course. Earth's primitive sensors had detected the fleet days ago. But what could they do? What could 40 ships do against 12,000? Admiral ordered the broadcast. The message was transmitted on every frequency, in every human language that the Coalition had recorded over 3 centuries of observation. The message was simple. "People of Earth, you are surrounded by the combined military forces of the Galactic Coalition. You have 12 hours to surrender unconditionally. All weapons must be disabled. All spacecraft must land. All military forces must stand down. If you do not comply, your planet will be destroyed. There will be no negotiation. There will be no second chance. This is your only warning." The fleet took position around Earth in a perfect sphere. Every ship aimed its weapons at the blue planet below. From every direction, death pointed at humanity. They waited for a response. For a long time, nothing happened. Earth's radio waves continued as normal. Music played. News broadcasts talked about politics and weather. Television shows told stories of love and adventure. It was as if the humans had not heard the message at all. Then, after 3 hours, a single transmission came from Earth. It was not a surrender. It was not a plea for mercy. It was not even a declaration of war. It was one sentence, broadcast in 4,000 different languages at the exact same moment. "You should not have come here." Admiral read the message on his display screen. He read it again. Then he laughed. The sound echoed across the bridge of the inevitable truth. "They threaten us," he said. 40 ships against 12,000 and they threaten us." His officers laughed with him. The idea was absurd. Humanity was brave, perhaps, foolish, certainly, but threatening. No, they were insects beneath the boot of the coalition. "Continue the countdown," ordered. "They have 9 hours left. If they do not surrender, begin the bombardment." The countdown continued. The fleet waited. On the planet below, humans went about their daily lives. Children went to school, adults went to work. Old people sat in parks and watched birds fly. They knew aliens surrounded their world. They knew death might come at any moment. But they did not seem afraid. Admiral noticed this. It bothered him more than he wanted to admit. He had conquered many worlds in his long career. He had seen many species face extinction. All of them had shown fear. All of them had begged for mercy. All of them had tried to run. But not humans. Humans just continued living, as if the fleet did not matter, as if 12,000 warships were nothing more than clouds passing overhead. "Strange creatures," muttered, watching the sensor readings. "They know they are going to die and they do nothing." Said nothing. He watched Earth rotate slowly beneath him. Blue oceans, green lands, white clouds, a beautiful planet, he had to admit. It was almost a shame to destroy it. Almost. The countdown reached the final hour. Still no surrender. Still no fear. Just that one strange message, repeating in his mind like a song he could not forget. "You should not have come here." Push the thought away. It meant nothing. Humans were primitive. Humans were weak. Humans would die like all the others. He was certain of it. He was wrong. The 12 hours ended. Earth did not surrender. Admiral was not surprised. He had expected this. Some species chose to fight even when fighting was hopeless. It was foolish, but he understood it. Pride was a powerful thing, even in primitive beings. "All ships prepare for bombardment," he ordered. His voice was calm. This was routine. "Target major population centers first, then military installations, then infrastructure. We will give them 1 hour to change their minds. If they do not, we continue until nothing remains." The fleet acknowledged the order. 12,000 ships powered up their weapons. Energy gathered in massive cannons. Missiles loaded into their tubes. Death prepared itself for delivery. Then the third battle group vanished. It happened without warning. One moment, 800 warships floated in perfect formation above Earth's North Pole. The next moment, they were gone, not destroyed, not damaged, simply gone. Empty space remained where they had been, as if the ships had never existed at all. Admiral stared at his display screen. The indicators for 800 ships had turned gray. No life signs, no energy readings, no distress signals, nothing. "What happened?" he demanded. "Report." His officers scrambled to find answers. Sensors swept the area where the third battle group had been. They found nothing. No debris, no radiation, no evidence of weapons fire. The ships had not exploded. They had not been shot down. They had simply stopped existing. "Impossible," whispered. His usually calm face showed something had never seen before. Fear, real fear. "Ships cannot just disappear. There must be wreckage. There must be something." "Send probe ships," ordered. "I want eyes on that location immediately." 3 small probe vessels flew toward the empty space. They transmitted video as they traveled. The footage showed nothing unusual. Stars, darkness, the curve of Earth below. Then the probes reached the coordinates where the third battle group had been. They found nothing, absolutely nothing. "It is as if they were never there," the science officer said. His voice trembled. "No mass, no gravity displacement, no residual energy. The space is completely empty." Before anyone could respond, another fleet vanished. The hegemony's Eastern Fleet. 600 crystal ships gone in an instant. The same empty space, the same lack of evidence, the same impossible disappearance. Now panic began to spread through the coalition armada. Ships that had floated in perfect formation began to drift. Captains shouted for information. Officers demanded explanations. None came. Admiral tried to maintain control. "All ships hold position, maintain discipline. We are the greatest military force in the galaxy. We do not fear tricks and illusions." But his words rang hollow. In the next 3 hours, 4,000 more ships vanished. The collective's 7th Armada. The Syndicate's Pride, the most advanced dreadnought ever built, 300 medical ships, 200 supply vessels, gone, all gone, without a single shot being fired. The disappearances followed no pattern that the coalition could understand. Ships vanished from every part of the sphere. Large ships and small ships, armed vessels and unarmed vessels. It did not matter what they did or where they positioned themselves. When it was their turn to vanish, they simply vanished. Some captains tried to run. They activated their faster-than-light drives and fled toward the edge of the solar system. They made it approximately 30 seconds into faster-than-light travel before disappearing from every tracking system in the galaxy. Their home worlds never heard from them again. Other captains tried to fight. They fired every weapon they had at Earth. Missiles streaked toward the blue planet. Energy beams lanced through space. Enough firepower to crack a continent launched toward humanity's home. None of it arrived. The weapons flew toward Earth and simply stopped existing. The missiles vanished. The energy beams faded into nothing. It was as if the planet was protected by something the coalition could not see or understand. Admiral watched his fleet die without dying. He watched his power disappear ship by ship. The greatest military force in galactic history was being erased, and he could do nothing to stop it. "What are they?" he whispered. "What are the humans?" No one could answer him. By the 17th hour, only 6,000 ships remained, half the fleet, half the greatest armada ever assembled, gone without a trace, and the disappearances continued. Every few minutes, another group of ships would blink out of existence. Made a desperate decision. If they could not destroy humanity from space, they would destroy them on the ground. He ordered a full invasion. 2 million soldiers would descend to Earth's surface. They would fight humanity face to face. They would burn their cities and salt their fields. They would end this threat with blood and fire. They launched, thousands of them, carrying soldiers from a dozen different species. They descended toward Earth's atmosphere like a plague of metal locusts. From the flagship, watched them fall. They entered the atmosphere, and then they were gone. Not destroyed, not crashed, just gone. 2 million soldiers vanished between one heartbeat and the next. The sensors showed nothing. The communication channels went silent. Another army added to the growing list of things that had simply stopped existing. Stood alone on his bridge. His officers had stopped speaking. What was there to say? They were facing something beyond their understanding, something that could make ships and soldiers disappear at will, something that could stop weapons in mid-flight, something that treated the greatest fleet in history like toys to be put away. A message appeared on his personal screen. It was not transmitted through any communication channel he recognized. It simply appeared as if written by an invisible hand. "We are coming for you now, Admiral. Do not be afraid. It will not hurt." Looked out the viewport at Earth. The planet looked so peaceful, so quiet. Blue oceans sparkled in the sunlight. White clouds drifted across green continents. It was beautiful. It had always been beautiful. And somewhere down there, something ancient and terrible was looking back at him. The lights on the inevitable truth flickered. The engines hummed in a frequency they had never hummed before. The walls seemed to bend slightly, as if the ship was being squeezed by giant invisible hands. Closed his 4 eyes. When he opened them again, he was no longer on his ship. He was somewhere else entirely. The last thing the coalition sensors recorded was the inevitable truth shrinking. It folded in on itself like paper being crumpled by an invisible fist. Smaller and smaller it became until it was the size of a shuttle, then the size of a ground vehicle, then the size of a person, then the size of an insect. Then it was gone. And around Earth, the space where 12,000 ships had floated was empty and silent. As if nothing had ever been there at all, Commander woke up in darkness. She did not know how long she had been unconscious. She did not know where she was. The last thing she remembered was sitting in her, watching Earth's atmosphere grow closer through the viewport. Then there had been a flash of something, not light exactly, something else, something her eyes could not understand. And then darkness. She stood up slowly. Her body felt strange, not hurt but different, lighter somehow. She reached for her weapon and found nothing. Her armor was gone. Her equipment was gone. She wore only the simple uniform she had put on that morning. "Commander," a voice came from nearby. It was one of her lieutenants. He sounded scared. "I am here," replied. "Is anyone else alive?" More voices answered. Her entire squad was there. 20 soldiers from the Dominion, the finest warriors in the galaxy, all of them alive, all of them stripped of their weapons, all of them standing in darkness so complete that they could not see their own hands. "Where are we?" asked another soldier. "I do not know," admitted. "But stay calm, stay together, we will find a way out." She took a step forward. The ground beneath her feet felt solid but strange. It was not metal or stone or earth. It felt like nothing she had ever walked on before, smooth and warm and almost alive. Then the lights came on. Wished they had stayed off. She stood in a chamber so vast that she could not see its walls. The ceiling stretched up into infinity. The floor spread out in every direction like an endless plain, and covering every surface, reaching up as far as she could see, were shelves. Millions of shelves, billions of shelves, more shelves than stars in the sky. And on every shelf sat jars. The jars glowed with soft light. They were made of something that looked like glass but was not glass. Each jar was about the size of fist, and inside each jar was something that made her 3 hearts stop. Ships. The jars contained ships. She walked closer to the nearest shelf and looked at a jar. Inside it, perfectly preserved and somehow still alive, was a cruiser. She could see the lights on its hull. She could see tiny figures moving behind its viewports. The ship was real. It was functional. It was simply very, very small. "By the ancient stars," whispered. "That is the endless horizon, Captain's ship. I served on it 5 years ago." Looked at more jars. She saw ships from every species in the coalition. Vessels, crystal ships, cruisers, syndicate destroyers. Thousands upon thousands of ships, each one shrunk down and stored in a jar like specimens in a museum. "They collected them," she said. Her voice sounded hollow in her own ears. "They collected all of them." "Not all," said a voice. "Not yet." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. It was soft and calm and completely terrifying. Spun around looking for its source. She saw nothing, just the endless shelves, just the countless jars, just her soldiers huddled together in fear. Then something stepped out of the shadows. It looked human, mostly. It had 2 arms and 2 legs and a face with 2 eyes, but something was wrong with it. Its proportions were slightly off. Its movements were too smooth, and its eyes held depths that no living thing should have. "Welcome to the collection," the figure said. It smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You are the additions." "What are you?" demanded. She tried to sound brave. She was not sure she succeeded. The figure tilted its head. "That is a complicated question. We have many names. Your species does not have words for most of them, but you may call us wardens. That is close enough to the truth." "Wardens of what?" "Of humanity, of Earth, of the garden." Did not understand. The figure seemed to sense her confusion. It walked closer, and she found that she could not move away. Her legs refused to obey her commands. "You studied humanity for 300 years, the warden said. "You watched their wars, their violence, their capacity for destruction. You saw a species that should have destroyed itself 1,000 times over. But they did not destroy themselves. Did you ever wonder why?" Had not wondered. She had assumed humans were simply lucky, or stupid, or both. "We are why," the warden continued. "We have been with them since the beginning, since they first climbed down from their trees and looked up at the stars. We shaped them. We guided them. We kept them alive when they should have died." "Why?" asked. "Why do you protect them?" The warden's smile grew wider, too wide, more teeth than any mouth should hold. "Because they feed us," it said simply. "Humans feel things so strongly. Fear, love, hate, joy, despair. Every emotion they experience, we consume. Every war they fight, we grow stronger. Every moment of every day, 7 billion minds pour out energy, and we drink it like water." "Felt sick, they are your livestock." "They are our garden," the warden corrected. "And you tried to burn our garden down." It gestured to the endless shelves of jars. "So now we are collecting you, every ship, every soldier, every species that came to threaten what is ours. You will not die, death would be wasteful, you will be preserved. Forever, aware but unable to move, alive but unable to act. You will join our collection and you will stay there until the stars themselves burn out." Tried to run, her body finally obeyed her commands. She ran toward the darkness at the edge of the chamber, her soldiers following close behind. They ran for what felt like hours. They ran until their legs burned and their lungs screamed. But the shelves never ended, the jars never stopped, and when they finally collapsed from exhaustion, the warden was standing in front of them. waiting, patient, eternal. There is no escape, it said gently. There never was. The moment you entered the Sol system, you became ours. Looked up at the infinite shelves. Somewhere up there, Admiral floated in a jar, still alive, still aware, trapped forever. Somewhere up there, 12,000 ships and 8 million soldiers waited in tiny glass prisons. And somewhere far below, on a blue planet called Earth, 7 billion humans went about their daily lives. They worked and played and loved and fought. They had no idea that monsters protected them. They had no idea that their entire existence was a farm. They were the most important species in the universe. And they did not even know it. Admiral floated in darkness. He could not move, he could not speak, he could not even close his eyes. He simply existed in a void without shape or form or meaning. Time did not seem to pass. Nothing seemed to happen. He was alone with his thoughts in an endless empty space. Then the truth came. It poured into his mind like water into a glass. He did not want it. He tried to resist it. But there was no resisting. The knowledge simply appeared, filling every corner of his consciousness with facts he had never known and wished he had never learned. He saw the beginning. 200,000 years ago, Earth was a young planet. Life had existed there for billions of years, but intelligent life was new. Small groups of humans wandered across grasslands and forests, hunting animals and gathering plants. They were weak. They were primitive. They should not have survived. But they were not alone. Something else lived on Earth, something that had existed since the planet was born. It was not made of matter like humans and animals. It was made of something else. Energy, perhaps, or thought, or something that had no name in any language. It existed in the spaces between things, in the gap between one second and the next, in the moment between sleeping and waking. The humans could not see it. They could only feel it. Sometimes they felt watched. Sometimes they felt guided. Sometimes they felt protected from dangers they did not even know existed. They created stories to explain these feelings. They called the invisible beings spirits, gods, angels, demons. They were none of these things. They were wardens. The wardens had discovered something wonderful about humans. Human minds produced energy. Every thought, every feeling, every moment of consciousness created a tiny spark of power. One human produced very little, but millions of humans, billions of humans, they produced a feast. The wardens began to feed. At first, they were careful. They took only a little. They let humans grow and multiply. They guided them away from extinction events. When a plague threatened to wipe out a tribe, the wardens nudged them toward healing plants. When a predator stalked a village, the wardens sent warning dreams. When two groups were about to destroy each other in war, the wardens sometimes intervened. Sometimes, because the wardens discovered something else. Strong emotions produced more energy than weak ones. Fear was powerful. Rage was powerful. Love and hate and despair and triumph were all powerful. War produced more energy than peace. Conflict produced more than harmony. So the wardens let humans fight. They let them suffer. They let them experience every extreme of emotion that their strange little minds could produce. And they fed and fed and fed until they grew strong beyond measure. Saw all of this? He saw civilizations rise and fall while the wardens watched from the shadows. He saw empires crumble into dust while invisible beings drank the despair of millions. He saw wars that killed countless people while something ancient smiled in satisfaction. He saw the truth of Earth. It was not a cradle of life. It was a farm. Humanity was not a species. They were a crop. Every human who had ever lived had existed for one purpose only, to feed the things that lived in the darkness. And now he understood why the coalition had failed. The wardens did not exist in normal space. They lived partially outside of what other beings called reality. They could not be detected because they did not occupy detectable dimensions. They could not be fought because they did not experience time and cause and effect the way physical beings did. To them, the coalition fleet was not a threat. It was barely even noticeable. Collecting 12,000 ships was no harder for them than a human picking flowers. The entire military might of 17 civilizations was nothing compared to the power the wardens had accumulated over 200,000 years of feeding. But there was something else, something that made mind recoil in horror. The wardens were not just protecting their food supply. They were preparing for something. For 200,000 years they had been growing stronger, storing energy, building power, waiting for something that was coming. Could not see what it was, The knowledge was blocked from him, but he could feel its shadow in the information that filled his mind. Something vast, something ancient, something that made the Wardens look like insects in comparison. The Wardens were afraid of it, and humanity was their weapon against it. Every war humans had ever fought was training. Every conflict was practice. Every act of violence was preparation for a battle that would come someday, a battle that would determine the fate of everything. The Wardens were not just farmers. They were generals building an army, and humanity did not even know they were soldiers. The truth faded from his mind, not all of it. Enough remained for him to understand his situation. But the deepest secrets, the most terrible knowledge was taken away. He was not ready for it. Perhaps no one was ready for it. He became aware of his body again. He was sitting in a jar made of something that was not glass. His flagship surrounded him, shrunk down to the size of a toy. Through the jar's walls, he could see endless shelves stretching in every direction. He could also see other jars. His crew was nearby, each of them in their own container. Some were awake and aware like him. Others seemed to be sleeping, their minds shut down by the horror of their situation. A warden appeared in front of his jar. It pressed its face against the surface and smiled. "Now you understand," it said. Its voice was perfectly clear despite the barrier between them. "You came to destroy something you did not understand. You threatened something more valuable than you can imagine, and now you will spend eternity thinking about your mistake." Tried to speak, he could not. His voice did not work in this strange prison. "Do not worry," the warden continued. "Time passes differently here. What feels like a year to you will be a second to the universe outside. You will be aware for what seems like billions of years. You will have plenty of time to think." It turned away. "And who knows, perhaps someday we will need you. Perhaps someday the war will come, and we will open all these jars and release our collection. Perhaps you will fight beside humanity against the darkness." It laughed. The sound was not pleasant. "Perhaps, but probably not. Probably you will simply wait here forever. Another trophy on our shelves. Another reminder to the galaxy that Earth is not to be touched." The warden walked away into the infinite darkness. And Admiral, once the greatest military commander in the galaxy, began his eternal imprisonment. Around him, 8 million soldiers did the same. And far below on a planet called Earth, a child looked up at the night sky and wondered if aliens were real. 3 years passed. The galaxy changed during those years. It became quieter, more careful. The great powers that had once ruled with confidence now moved with fear, because they all knew what had happened at Earth. They all knew what it meant. 12,000 ships, 17 species, 8 million soldiers, the greatest military force ever assembled. Gone, all gone, without a single survivor, without a single piece of wreckage, without a single explanation. The Galactic Senate met on the ancient world of Prime. 42 species sent representatives. They came to hear a report from historian Al, who had spent 3 years studying the Sol system from a safe distance. Al was young for her species. Her scales had not yet darkened with age, and her eyes still held the brightness of youth. But those eyes had seen things that had aged her spirit. She stood before the Senate with a data pad in her hands and fear in her hearts. "Thank you for gathering," she began. Her voice was steady but barely. "I will present my findings on the Sol event." The chamber fell silent. Everyone wanted to hear this. Everyone feared hearing this. 3 years ago, the Coalition Expeditionary Force entered the Sol system with the intention of eliminating or containing the human species. The force consisted of 12,000 warships from 17 member species, carrying over 8 million military personnel. She paused. None of them returned. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Everyone knew this already, but hearing it stated so plainly made it feel more real, more terrible. Our long-range observation posts recorded everything. The fleet took position around Earth. They broadcast their ultimatum. And then they began to disappear, ship by ship, group by group. Over a period of approximately 20 hours, the entire fleet vanished from all sensors. She touched her data pad. Images appeared on the great screen behind her. Empty space where ships should have been. Sensor readings that showed nothing. Communication logs that ended mid-sentence. There was no weapons fire, Al continued. No explosions, no debris, no distress signals. The ship simply ceased to exist. Our most advanced sensors detected no cause, no explanation, nothing. A senator from the collective raised a tentacle. What of Earth itself? Was the planet damaged? No, Earth remained completely untouched. Human civilization continues as before. They still broadcast their primitive entertainment programs. They still fight their small wars. They still go about their daily lives. Al's voice grew quieter. They appear entirely unaware that anything happened. The chamber erupted in confused discussion. How could humans not know? How could they not realize that a force capable of destroying stars had threatened their world? How could they remain ignorant of their own salvation? Al waited for silence. When it came, she spoke again. I do not believe humans were responsible for the disappearance of the fleet. This caused even more confusion. If not humans, then who? For 3 years, I have analyzed every piece of data from the Sol system. I have studied every sensor reading, every communication intercept, every long-range photograph. I found nothing unusual, nothing that could explain what happened. She paused until I enhanced the visual data. She touched her data pad again. A new image appeared on the screen. It showed Earth from a great distance. The blue planet floated peacefully in space, surrounded by the stars. This is a standard photograph of Earth taken by our observation post. Nothing unusual. She touched another control. This is the same photograph, enhanced using every technique available to our science. We amplified the light. We filtered out interference. We cleaned up the image in ways that should reveal nothing new. The screen changed. The Senate chamber fell completely silent. Earth still floated in the center of the image. It still looked peaceful and blue and harmless. But around it, visible only through the enhancement, were shapes. Thousands of shapes. They surrounded the planet like a shell. They filled the space around Earth so completely that there should have been no room for anything else. But normal sensors did not detect them. Normal eyes could not see them. They existed in some way that technology was not designed to observe. The shapes were not ships. They were not machines. They were something else entirely. Something that had no name in any language. Something that should not have been able to exist. And they were all looking at the camera. Somehow, across the vast distance of space, through the enhancement of a photograph taken 3 years ago, the shapes knew they were being watched, and they were watching back. Several senators fainted, others screamed. One simply stood up and walked out of the chamber, unable to process what they were seeing. Al did not blame them. These entities exist partially outside normal space, she said. Her voice was barely a whisper now. They cannot be detected by any sensor we possess. They cannot be affected by any weapon we have developed. They are, for all practical purposes, invisible and invincible. She turned off the image. Several senators made sounds of relief. Based on my research, I believe these entities have been present on Earth for hundreds of thousands of years, perhaps longer. They exist alongside humanity without human knowledge. They protect humanity without human awareness. She looked at the Senate with haunted eyes. The coalition fleet was not defeated by humans. It was collected by these entities. For reasons we cannot understand, they guard Earth. They allow nothing to threaten their world. She straightened her spine and tried to sound professional. My recommendation is that we reclassify the Sol system as a Class Omega exclusion zone. No contact, no observation, no approach within 50 light-years. Any vessel that enters this zone should be considered lost. A senator found her voice. That seems extreme. Surely we should study these entities, learn from them. Elle laughed. It was not a happy sound. Study them, Senator. I enhanced one photograph, one image taken from 40 light-years away, and they knew. They looked at me through that image. They saw me studying them, and they smiled. She gathered her data pad. These beings do not wish to be studied. They do not wish to communicate. They wish only to protect Earth, and anything that threatens that protection will disappear, just like the coalition fleet. She walked toward the exit of the chamber. My recommendation stands. Stay away from Sol, stay away from Earth, stay away from humanity. Let them live in their ignorance. Let them continue their small lives on their small planet. She stopped at the door and looked back. Because whatever is watching over them is far more terrifying than anything else in this galaxy, and it is very, very hungry. On Earth, a little girl sat in her backyard looking up at the stars. She dreamed of the day when humans would travel to other worlds. She imagined meeting friendly aliens who would share their knowledge and technology. She pictured a galaxy full of wonder and adventure. She did not know that the galaxy had learned to fear her planet. She did not know that ancient beings surrounded her world like a shell of invisible watchers. She did not know that she was part of a harvest that had been growing for 200,000 years. She only knew that the stars were beautiful. And in the darkness between dimensions, something old and patient felt her wonder and smiled. The garden was safe. The crop was growing. And the galaxy would stay away forever. This was the truth of Earth. And humanity would never know it.